Good evening. My name is Enos Harris, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Cerise Waiters is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Zoom and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website. Um, as this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet. If you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the address listed on the hearing notice. This public hearing is being held to consider three items. Order number 211605. This order supersedes the order number 211536, which was rescheduled from April 2nd, 2025, to consider the removal of 6 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1500 Grove Street. Staff approved the removals and the public has protested. Order number 211606. This order supersedes order number 211537, which was rescheduled from April 2nd, 2025, to consider the removal of 3 street trees with replacement within the Bigler Avenue public right-of-way. The 3 trees are Monterey pine trees, and the closest physical addresses are 196 Twin Peaks Boulevard and 2 Clarendon Avenue. Staff approved the removals and the public has protested. And the third order is 211608 to consider the removal of 1 street tree without replacement adjacent to 1641 York Street. Replacement tree will be relocated within 120 days or will be added to the delayed replacement tree report. Staff approved the removal and the public protested. My job as a hearing officer is to gather facts for the hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our director of public works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the director. The director will make the final determinations. When the director's determinations are made, the department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. This hearing will proceed as follows for 3 cases. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. There is no time limit for this presentation. Then I will allow the property owner or appellant to speak. Then any members of the public or witness who wants to speak. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will then have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. If you are a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then use Zoom's raise your hand feature if you are on a computer to help to put yourself in the queue to speak. If you are dialing in on your phone, dial *9 to indicate you are raising your hands. When it is your turn to speak, I will recognize you. If on the phone and you are muted, press *6 to unmute yourself. If you would like to use visual materials in your presentation, please let me know before you speak. You will have the standard 3 minutes to provide your comments. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicants. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. At this time, we will open the hearing to public comments. Members of the public may make comments on matters that are within the department's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Are there any public comments at this time?
Yes, this is Michael Nolte. I just wanted to point out that we recently in April celebrated Earth Day or Earth, and that's shows that we are still thinking about our planet and um, how to best improve our planet. And one of those ways is through saving energy, as well as trees are a very important part of that. And since it's a tree hearing, I think we should be reminding ourselves that San Francisco needs to plant 50,000 trees in the next 20 years, and we failed to do that goal. And we should be on target to do that. Um, when we have hearings like this and we're constantly talking about removal of trees, um, we're going against our goals for San Francisco. Um, and it's important that um, trees are a very vital part of our city, especially since um, we now have a housing element, and the housing element wants us to put in more housing, which is concrete, and um, that kind of again creates a problem for us as citizens, putting up more housing structures and not worrying about the greenery that San Francisco needs to also keep to its goals there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments at this time?
Yes, Ms. Harris, I do have a written comment that was submitted to me by email to read.
Okay.
Okay, this is just Joshua Clip public comment for the 4/28/25 hearing. I make this comment as a member of the public and not in my role as a member of the city's Urban Forestry Council. At 13.7%, San Francisco has the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. According to San Francisco Public Works, other major U.S. cities average 25% tree canopy, nearly 2 times as much. In 2014, San Francisco issued an urban forest plan that called for the net addition of 2,500 street trees per year. In 2021, San Francisco issued a climate action plan that called for the net addition of 40,000 new street trees by 2040. According to the most recent San Francisco Urban Forestry Council report, since 2017, San Francisco has not net gained a single street tree. In fact, San Francisco has net lost more plus or minus 1,300 street trees. And this loss is set against a backdrop of severe underfunding for the planting and watering of new street trees. There is no money for street tree planting set aside in the annual city budget. The majority of funding for street tree planting comes down from donations, in lieu fees, and Prop K, a fund that is dwindling because it's tied directly to fossil fuel usage in a city increasingly featuring electric vehicles. And federal funding for tree planting has been almost entirely yanked by the current administration, largely and shamefully in the name of equity and equality. Additionally, the city's 2021 Climate Action Plan, a plan drafted in response to the city's 2019 declaration that we are in a climate emergency, called for a policy of preserving trees for construction and infrastructure improvements, and it called for this policy by 2023. The Climate Action Plan went on to say that in instances where a tree absolutely cannot be preserved, the city should have a policy for basal area replacement. According to our city's own plans, records, and reports, we are failing ourselves and our future by continuing to remove trees without regard to our climate action plan and the policies it says we need to be climate resilient. without exploring all alternatives, all while allowing driveways and other infrastructure to permanently remove tree planting locations. We are failing to thoroughly examine whether trees can be preserved during construction and not even bringing up the idea of basal area replacement. We're not coming close to replacing what we're taking out, let alone building our urban forest. Trees are critical in the fight against our downward spiral toward climate disaster, and San Francisco knows this because it said we are in a climate emergency, and it took the time to create a climate action plan. Not only that, but ask the people of Los Angeles who are left with nothing on their incinerated properties, but often just a tree that survived the recent wildfires. Trees aren't just about the resilience of our cities, they represent the resilience of hope. It's against the backdrop of all this that I hope the department will consider the matters on tonight's agenda. Thank you. That ends his statement.
Thank you. If there are no more comments for this item, I will close this item. This item is now closed. The first item on today's agenda is order number 211605. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Buck, and I'm the urban forester with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry, and just wanted to say hello before I hide behind a PowerPoint presentation. Typically what we do is start with some general background about our San Francisco's Urban Forestry Ordinance, Article 16 of the Public Works Code, that it applies broadly to most of the cases we typically hear during a tree hearing. And with that, I will go ahead and share my screen and get this started. This may take a moment from beginning. And just want to confirm that I have a PowerPoint that's relatively full image, depending on your settings.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Okay, that was the quickest time yet. Thank you again, and welcome to our hearing. So San Francisco does have an urban forestry ordinance and also an urban forest plan, and also mission statement at Public Works in general. And our Bureau's goal is to ensure safe, clean, and green infrastructure and public right-of-way. That's the goal of our full Department of Public Works. And our Bureau's mission, or BUF for short, is to preserve and grow the urban forest while balancing the safety and needs of a growing and evolving city. These are some images. Top left shows mature tree maintenance with the tree crews, in this case a removal. Upper right is protection of trees during construction. Bottom left is tree planting. And bottom right, I believe, is suggesting that we do have jurisdiction over some trees on private property if they're within 10 feet of a public right-of-way and meet a certain size criteria. Those are referred to as significant trees. And the voters passed an initiative, a ballot in 2016 that asked the public if they wish the city would take on the maintenance responsibility for San Francisco's street trees. And the voters overwhelmingly voted in favor of that by 79%. So since July 1st, 2017, the city has been maintaining the street trees in the public right-of-way. And prior to that, one third of the citizens of San Francisco, property owners, were responsible for maintaining the street trees. Sorry, 1/3 was maintained by Public Works, and 2/3 was actually maintained by fronting property owners. And with our ballot initiative, we have a set aside of $19 million plus or minus a year so that we can prune, street trees, remove when necessary, and also make sidewalk repairs. This is showing our progress to date. This does need to be updated, but we're approximately 75% of the way through our first full cycle of tree maintenance when it comes to street tree pruning. And so a tree ordinance, what it does is establish authorization and standards for addressing a wide range of issues regarding trees. And as I stated earlier, our ordinance is codified under Article 16 of the Public Works Code. Our first hearing will now transition into our first case this evening is Order 211-605, and it's regarding the removal of 6 street trees with replacement adjacent to 1500 Grove Street. Staff approved the removals, and during the public posting notification period, the public protested. Just note that this order supersedes a previous order 211-537, which was rescheduled from the April 2nd hearing. So the subject trees in this case are all Myoporum or Myoporum trees. The Latin name, there's no easy common name. Sometimes, you know, flowering cherry is like an example of a common name. So the common name is simply Myoporum or Myoporum. And the subject trees are in this image. We'll share a number of images for each site at the cases this evening. These are broadleaf evergreen trees, and these trees were falling out of favor as a street tree in San Francisco well before an insect started impacting them about 15 years ago, this species across the city and California. But we were starting to consider the benefits of this species when this insect, thrips, became more prevalent in California. We'll talk more about that. The presence of this insect, thrips, doesn't mean that we've been looking to remove them. We still evaluate each tree in San Francisco individually. We don't make broad categorizations without actually inspecting and evaluating each tree individually. That said, we have 6 trees, street trees, that are over mature, meaning they reached maturity and now they're beginning to senesce or decline, meaning slow down their growth, and developing structural issues. So they do have very poor structure. The vigor is very poor because of the insect thrip. And I'm going to read some notes that the urban forestry inspector for our team created in preparation for the hearing. So the trees are in severe decline due to multiple issues. Decay is present in all of the 6 trees, some with fruiting bodies, fruiting cankers that are visible. Fruiting bodies such as fungi are actually decay fungi. They break down wood and cause it to decay, and wood that is decayed has no strength holding capacity, strength bearing. This deterioration has weakened the structural integrity of the trees in the main stems and also in the main trunks. There's also some girdling roots present, which may contribute to poor growth and poor structure. So overall, due to these factors, the trees pose a risk to public safety and are recommended for removal. I just want to point out that the community has been involved with the trees, including we received letters that regretfully supported removal of the trees from the community because the community recognized that the trees were in failing health. Here are some close-ups of the structure of some of the trees. This image is to show the presence of fruiting bodies and decay and the formation of cracks in the main trunk. I added some additional images just to make it more obvious where, when we say, what does a crack in a tree look like? This is what it looks like. This vertical seam where there's gaps in the bark, and the bark is beginning to slough off and separate. This is a close-up of that. And so throughout the canopies of all these trees, we see again and again signs of decay, past branch failures, and points within the tree where the tree is not compartmentalizing the decay, but it's continuing to spread. And where you have a injury like a decay present, that weakens the structural union of where those two main stems join. And so that makes that area of the tree more prone to failure. This is just a very detailed look. Obviously, we know where the doors are, but we have an inspector who's pointing out the heavy use of this site, even though there's no pedestrians visible in this image. Obviously, there's a school where there's people coming and going quite a bit. This is showing some of the girdling roots that are starting to decay and wear out, so it's a little less obvious, but that's what they look like. And what I want to point out is the canopy decline, the nature of this tree, the species pattern is to have it be a real thick, glossy, lustrous canopy around. And what you see in this image is far from that. You see a lot of decline in the upper canopy. You can see the sky, which normally would be blotted out by a really heavy, thick umbrella of leaves. I added this image myself. This is February 2025, again showing a lot of decline within the canopies of the trees. I also want to note that years and years and years ago, the trees were likely topped or excessively pruned, shown in these sort of points that have formed these gnarled, sort of stub-looking growths within the tree. Where those new stems have formed, those are inherently weak points within the structure of the tree because they're epicormically attached. They don't have the original attachment that the previous branches had, and that makes them prone to failure in wind or even not in wind. But it's within these locations of these old topping cuts where some of that decay is formed. Their arrow in the canopy also is just pointing out a decline in canopy vigor, and we'll explain why that is. So this is 2016. Thrips was in town, but it hadn't reached all of our Myoporum trees yet. Another view of pretty healthy looking thrips, healthy looking Myoporum before being impacted by thrips. You can see this continuous canopy. This is how it looks as of a month ago, a couple of months ago in Google Street View, a thinning throughout all the canopies. So it's the presence of the thrips declining, causing the canopy to decline, but also the structural weaknesses with the decay present in the old topping cuts. So from our staff level perspective, this is a relatively straightforward recommendation to remove and replace the trees. Just wanted to point out, I kept the images small for those who don't like to see insects up close, but just pointing out that the University of California has an educational program, and they have a whole section on Myoporum thrips. If this was impacting vineyards or citrus crop or things that are economically more obvious with an industry that has sales at stake, we would know this. You'd be very familiar with this insect, but it's impacting only, in quotes, ornamental street trees. And so there's less discussion about it, but it's a big impact across the state of California. And what happens with these insects is that they lay eggs with the larvae, and they also suck out plant, the water and the sugars. It causes the leaves to actually deform, and it inhibits the production of photosynthesis and the flow of water, nutrients, and sugars and starches throughout the tree. So the tree health declines. Up close, if you were to look at the canopy, that's what's going on at the branch tips here, is that Myoporum thrips are preventing it from leafing back out with healthy leaves. So to make a very long story short, This is a pretty straightforward case for us. We didn't mean to reschedule it multiple times, but we initiated the removal of the 6 trees. They are all replantable in the locations where they are. I will note that the school initiated on their own expansion, basin expansions, sidewalk landscaping, to reduce the amount of roots that needed to be cut during a recent round of sidewalk repair. So unfortunately, it's just time for these trees to be removed and replaced, but all 6 will be replaced on site. They meet our spacing from each other and from utilities. So to be consistent with how we handled similar cases, the staff recommendation was to approve the removal with replacement. Thank you. That concludes the staff presentation for this item.
Thank you, Chris. Is the applicant or representative of this the school available?
Yes, we do have somebody here who would like to speak, and they're going to make a presentation, so I need to promote them to panelists.
Okay.
Just one moment. Now, as you come over, you will need to please unmute yourself once again, and then you'll be able to share.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Apologies.
No problem. And as soon as you're ready, just let me know, and then you will have 3 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay. Okay.
That looks good.
Good evening. My name is Cameron Cooper. My children attend Pacific Primary Preschool, and I serve on the board of directors as the lead of facility and operations team. Pacific Primary's intent with the tree removal is to ensure the safety of the community. An arborist was hired by the school out of precaution and due diligence. We are saddened to lose trees that have been a part of the school since the founding 50 years ago. However, safety takes priority, and we look forward to replacing all the trees as soon as possible with healthy trees for future generations of the school and community to enjoy. I will read the following on behalf of our hired arborist, Ellen Shea, in her own words. When I visited these trees in December 2024, they were in very poor condition. My Porium trees had been very successful and popular in the city, but in the past 25 years, most have declined or died due to insects known as Myporium thrips. They live inside the leaves, causing distortion and leaf drop. We can see the dramatic decline between May 2011 and June 2022 in these photos. The westernmost trees, 4, 5, and 6, have signs of decay near the base, including hollow-sounding trunks or dead wood. 2 branches fell from tree number 4 in 2023. 1 struck the school roof. 2 other branches failed on this tree in the past. A large branch failed on tree number 5 about 8 to 9 years ago. We considered if the trees could be removed in phases over time. Removing some of the trees exposes, hold on. There we go. Sorry, this slide. We considered if the trees could be removed in phases over time. Removing some of the trees exposes the remaining trees to more wind and increases the risk of branch or tree failure. We cannot trust any of these trees to remain stable without the protection of the nearby trees. Some of the trees are even intertwined and dependent on each other for support. Our conclusions. The 6 Myporiums are in very poor health due to foliage loss from thrips and will not recover even with pesticide use. They have poor structure and wood decay and are beginning to fall apart. Past branch failure often leads to more branch failures because the remaining branches and adjacent trees become more exposed to wind. Pruning to reduce weight on branches would likely remove too much foliage and kill the trees. Selective removal of some trees will likely destabilize the remaining trees. Removal and replacement of all 6 trees at once is the best option. We have generous sized tree wells and no overhead lines on Grove, which means space for larger trees, such as the coast live oaks, which are on the side of the
30
school
seconds.
of the building across the street. And the image on the right shows the coast live oaks, which are directly across the street from the trees, which we're proposing to be removed and would complement one another. Thank you, and I've submitted Ellen's report to the Bureau. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments? John Nolte?
Yes, give me just one moment. Go ahead, Mr. Nolte.
Good evening. There's a couple of issues going on here. One, you have a great little report from the arborist about, the trees, and then you have Buff too. But then you also have them both saying that these issues have been around for 15 years. And so why couldn't they spray 14, 13 years ago and deal with these pests that were referred to? So these trees never got to this point. And then the next issue is that you never talked about the empty plot on Baker Street, which I think should be included here, since you want to take out 6 on one street side of the building, and then there's an empty plot on the other. And it was shown in his own presentation, both presentations from above. So again, it's like a happy here. Talk about one side, but you don't talk about the other missing trees that are on the property. Here we're talking about removal, but we don't hear about the replacement and additional replacement of the empty plot that's also there on Baker. So I find concerning that you hire an arborist, but you do a partial thing. You only talk about the 6 trees. You don't talk about the 7th tree on Baker, which is empty. And then you've already decided a species, which is really up to Buff to decide what species goes in. So and that's always I was of the understanding that Buff decides what species goes in. So I don't feel comfortable with the arborist for the school deciding just because you have it across the street that might be better. Buff has more of a database probably for the city anyway, and should be probably deciding what species goes in. But again, my issue is that if the school knows these trees were there, and also I don't know how, and here they talked about tree failures of the limbs over the years on multiple different of the 6 trees, but they knew then by it falling on the roof, falling on the ground, or being hit, and also the way it is next to the branches coming out into the street, why outside of the tree or gets hurt. So, and also the age. So this is a no-brainer that these trees were not maintained by the city, which had it from 2000 and going to Buff from 2017, and prior to that, the school, I'm not taking care of it when these issues came up. So I find this sort of interesting, but also concerning, because we're not going to get back the majority of those trees.
30 seconds.
With the replacement. And also, I think there should be more to this. And also, since it's a school, there should be something tied to the school to do something, a program or something about, trees and the responsibility of the trees. In the past, they have, Buff has encouraged programs with the schools, and I didn't hear anything like that either. So that's kind of annoying for an adult to hear that children are not being told about how to deal with plants in the city. Thank you.
That's,
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Before we go to Mike Nolte, Chris, are you able to speak to the city's abatement of this insect now that we know about it?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, one of the challenges would be San Francisco's very low tolerance for introducing chemicals into the environment. I think it's pretty much have a no chemical, no spray policy, more or less. Not always the case, but more or less, just not something we want to do in the public right of way. There's also limited success with that, and it would be something that would need to be applied annually. And so there's some logistical challenges. You know, we're definitely a city that's we look for what's referred to as integrated pest management, where you use maybe like a natural predator, a natural vector to address the biological issue. And the famous example is using, if you have an aphid issue with a tree, one could put ladybugs. You actually buy ladybugs and put them at the base of the tree at night, and they crawl up and go to town with the aphids. So yeah, that definitely is not the case with the Myoporum thrips.
Okay.
And I think there, to Mr. Nolte's point, there probably would have been more resources had this been a cached crop that was more literally at stake, like if it was red wine or white wine or citrus crop. But unfortunately, we too wish there was more lengthy reply, but we wish too that there was a greater recognition about the importance of the species to urban city folks. But that's a little bit about that. And I don't want to get into rebuttal, but we're aware of the empty basin. I was just looking on Google Street View, and we'll verify that it's replantable and make sure that it's replanted as well.
Thank you so much. Okay, Michael Nolte?
One of the things that hasn't been mentioned so far is the timeline of planting of trees. I would like to suggest that this will be done during the time when school is not in session. I would assume maybe summer school time, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know the school's calendar, so that there's no problems with the children being around, or the you know, because it looks like these are the entrances and exits of the school is nearby, and there's the white zone. I noticed there was a white zone, so not to impede the ability of the access to the school. Also, that all trees should be planted, including the missing tree around the corner, should be done at the same time. And that all should be the same species, so that there's no mismatch. And maybe that there should be, since it's a school, that maybe there should be some sort of, it was mentioned earlier, some teaching to the students to understand the need to take care of trees, because obviously there's been a number of failures here that have happened, allowing the trees to I mean, I think on one hand, the school needs to, you know, it's great that the school finally wants to take care of their property, and they've instigated this to happen, to the trees to be replaced, and they've hired an arborist, so yeah, kudos for that. But at the same time, I'm just wondering what happened to the empty tree plot, how long it's been empty, and how come it hasn't been replaced. And if there is any other, since they've hired an arborist and that information hasn't been made public, if there is some sort of plan for that's mentioned for any other kind of greenery for the on behalf of the school. Because I mean, trees can go into the plots, but
30
also
seconds.
trees can go into the plots, but also other greenery can also go. And also, since it's near school, there really needs large amount of protection of the trees because it's next to a school. I'm sorry, I mean, even kids sometimes want to climb the trees and do damage to the trees. So there needs to be adequate protection around the trees once replaced. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments on this matter?
No other raised hands at this time.
Okay. There are no more comments for this item. I will close this item and make my recommendation to the director. The next item is order 211606. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. Chris Buck again with the Bureau of Urban Forestry, San Francisco Public Works, and I'll share my screen in just a moment. Should do it. And from current slide. Great, thank you. So this next case, as stated, is order 211606. And the subject trees are within public right-of-way that is often referred to as a paper street, meaning on a map it exists, but it's not a developed street or road because it's much too steep. So it's referred to as Bigler Avenue, and it is between the site itself, the closest physical addresses would be 196 Twin Peaks Boulevard and 2 Clarendon Avenue. It's the proposed removal of 3 street trees with replacement within the Bigler public right-of-way. The trees are Monterey pine trees, Pinus radiata. The closest addresses we just highlighted. Staff approved the removals and the public protested. Also, a housekeeping note, this order supersedes order 211537, which was rescheduled from the April 2nd hearing. This is a map showing how our jurisdiction is established in San Francisco. So everything in this slide that is within the white area is referred to as public right-of-way. It's the streets, like sidewalks and roads. You can see a section in green that is either Rec and Park or the PUC or another city agency. Gray is private property. So in this particular case, Bigler Avenue is just like, in some ways, the famous Lombard Street that was decided to be paved, a paved bricked roadway to deal with the famous grade. Well, hundreds of other public rights-of-way are just as steep, where the city engineers decided that it was too steep to develop a road. And so these public rights-of-way remained as a public asset, a public right-of-way or a commons, but they weren't developed as regularly engineered streets. So we benefit from these quite a bit because they often serve as these sort of unofficial parks, even though they're a public right-of-way maintained by Public Works, which is only the case. We actually maintain all street trees in the public right-of-way, so I should clarify. Prior to July 1st, 2017, adjacent property owners were responsible for maintaining the trees. And the city now has the maintenance responsibility across the city. So again, just showing the 2 larger stars are the 2 larger tree locations, which we'll talk more about. And there's a 3rd star, which is a smaller tree, which we'll also talk about. So looking at the actual trees themselves, again, we're looking at Monterey pine trees. And the image on the left is showing tree number 1, which is much taller and larger, and tree number 2, which you can see in the background is a bit malformed and not as large. What we're looking at here, I'll zoom in to show better. It's hard to show it, but we're showing the canopy with severe decline, where a lot of needles have fallen off the branches. That's not normal or typical for the species. And so what that's showing is impacts from pine pitch canker, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but it's a serious disease that impacts the flow of water nutrients within the cambium of the tree, the phloem and xylem, and it essentially prevents the tree from operating well and causes these needles to decline and fall off. Here's another example of the same tree. Again, it may misleadingly look green because the needles and the branches that have been impacted by pitch canker have already died back and dropped the reddish orange needles. But showing them again here, typically very bare, without all that thick lustrous green canopy that we typically would see for the species. Another view of that. There are a number of other trees that are in the area that would remain. And this is the second tree. This tree was misshapen over the years. They likely could have been a much larger branch or tree above it years ago. So it formed a rather unusual canopy. It has very little canopy left to it. And the canopy that it does have, even though it doesn't seem like it because it looks green, is also showing a lot of decline within the canopy impacted from pine pitch canker. The third tree is actually already fallen. So it's the tree with the severe lean towards the Clarendon intersection here. And so it's fallen and just in the last few weeks. And just to show that it fell from a root failure, it wasn't cut down with a chainsaw. So just showing how it yanked up the soil when it fell, and that's not something you can do by using a chainsaw. So just want to let folks know that's was a natural occurrence, nothing to do with a chainsaw or private or public tree crew doing work there. Just a little bit more about pine pitch canker recommendations. We have a section on our website that we put on our website at least 15 years ago. There were a lot of pine trees that were dying. Well, there have been a lot of pine trees dying since the late 1980s in Northern California. And so we just wanted to put information about pitch canker and also bark beetles on our website. That said, there's also information on both the UC Cooperative Extension and the United States Department of Agriculture that talks about pine pitch canker. The disease is Fusarium subglutens. The fungus, now this is years ago, but introduced into California and has had very serious impacts on Monterey pines. Not all pines get it, and if they do get it, they've been resistant to it, but these two trees we believe are showing enough signs of pitch canker that it's reasonable to post and initiate both trees for removal. The trees will be replaced. It'll be challenging to replace trees in this location, but we can do it because there is access from this frontage right here where we can pull up and find locations for replacement trees with the longer hose that's available on our watering truck. So to be consistent with how we've handled similar pine tree recommendations, we initiated the removal of these 3 trees and we received protests during the posting period. But that concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to
go ahead.
clarify, in this case, there's no applicant. It was initiated by the staff. So there isn't like an appellant per se.
Okay, perfect. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments? Mr. Nolte?
Yes, good evening. Again, another example of, here you bring up another disease and you don't really say how you are combating it, and you're saying it's been around since 1980s, and so you should have had something, with all the pine trees that we do have in San Francisco, there should be something that you should be doing to protect them, and so it won't get to this far. And then the second part is that here you have 3 trees, and actually I don't know how many more because I really can't focus onto that location of the map that you showed it, because Google Map doesn't really show the street. So the issue would be, again, is you're limiting it to 3, but I don't know how much spacing there is on that as you put it, potential open space that was put there, and you're responsible for it. So can more than 3 trees go in? I mean, because again, I would seem by what I see there is, because I have lived on hills, and this sort of thing is when you have something like this, especially for kids or something, they like to go on into these open spaces, and so the issue would be, I would assume there are houses on either side of this street that you mentioned. And so that Bigler Avenue, and so why can't more trees there to protect the 2 property owners on either side? So make sure that they're not being hindered by children or bikers or whatever getting up there, because this is, again, Twin Peaks, which a lot of people do go up there, especially Twin Peaks is a tourist destination, and they come from different directions to get up there. So I'm concerned about the safety of the property owners on either side of this street, that there's only it's an open plot basically. So I live on the hill, so we had multiple of these all over the place that were used as sidewalks to go through, or shortcuts, instead of going down the middle of that thing to get to another street or something. So again, I don't know how that was choosing this location, but it's a safety issue for the property owners,
30 seconds.
for the city now, because you're saying it's under Buff's jurisdiction, and so if anything happens to anybody on that property, they'll sue the city. So you have to secure the site, and I don't hear anything about securing the site. All I hear is about removing 3 trees. So my concern is, how is the city going to secure the site, which is more important than trees being removed, because if there's no security there, then there's a liability for the city, property owners, and the city at large, because of you taking out trees that are dying, and not thinking of the bigger picture for security of the block. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Okay, Michael Nolte?
Yes, I think my comments from my previous issue, anyway, I just want a couple things. One is timeline. What's the timeline to put the new set of trees in, and why, it goes back to what one of the public comments at the beginning of the hearing was, which was under general public comment. Is this going to be done under basil, and put in more trees because of the basil? Because we have, how are we deciding how many trees go back in? How's that being decided? Since this is it sounds like this is a public tree, and not in a way that's being sound. It's not. So there's no, and so then there's, which has not been discussed, is what kind of tree is going in. So, and then since we're not really dealing with the sidewalk trees, it's what's the width of the tree that's going to go in. And I don't see why not more mature trees could go in, because it's because it would have deeper roots and take better hold, because it's on, I guess what I'm hearing, it's on a hill, kind of a steep incline. So it needs to have deeper roots to take hold. I'm glad to hear that that our Department of Public Works has large hoses that can water the trees up a hill. That makes sense to have such equipment, and I hope maybe they have more than one in the whole city, not just one in their arsenal. Again, if there could be the questions answered for the public, the timeline, and if there's been a decision on what kind of tree. And if multiple trees why can't multiple trees go back in, since it's all open? It sounds like it's an all open space area to begin with.
30 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. Are there any other comments from the public?
I
Okay.
don't see any other hands.
Okay, so if there are no further comments on this item, I will close this item. This item is now closed. The last item on the agenda is order number 211608. May I have Public Works make its presentation?
Thank you. Good evening. Chris Buck again with Bureau of Urban Forestry, San Francisco Public Works, and I'm going to share my screen in a second. And we'll move on to the next slide. Just a moment. Great, thank you. So again, speaking on the next item, which is the removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 1641 York Street. A replacement tree will be relocated within 120 days, will be added to the delayed replacement tree report. Staff approved the removal and the public protested, and order 211608. Moving on to a photo of the subject tree. This is known as the weeping bottlebrush, or Callistemon viminalis, and just showing the overall vigor of the tree is good. Mature tree, condition, the vigor is good. The structure, there's some poor, there's some issues with the structure. It's likely poor overall. The structure of the tree itself, not a reason to remove and replace the tree based on the overall size of the tree and that the structure is not serious. It's just noted. So the deficiencies, just to speak to that, multiple stems with poor unions. This is characterized by included bark and narrow branch angles, narrow points of attachment. The tree is planted in the sidewalk, which does not currently meet minimum standards for planting under the current department policy, the director's order. This is a guide to planting and maintenance of street trees that establishes a minimum width for planting street trees. And one thing to note on this is that the property owner, which we'll explain, is repairing their sewer lateral, their sewer line that connects their sewer line to the main line in the streets. They wish to retain the tree. They're not looking to remove the tree. However, the nature of the work is going to require pretty serious excavation. So we don't yet know exactly what we're going to find beneath the grade, beneath the sidewalk during excavation. And so if the tree can be retained and worked around, that is the goal of the property owner. It's the goal of the city. That said, unfortunately, we have to at least prepare the public for the possibility that things may not go well, meaning they're not in our control. The size and placement, location of those roots is an unknown. And if we stated with any certainty that we knew where they were for sure, we wouldn't be able to prove that. And so removal is going to be the last resort in this case. And we're going to get into the specifics of it. This is a pretty helpful view. We're showing the tree in a typical tree basin cutout in the sidewalk, the public right of way. In this image, it's to the right of the property owner's driveway. What the yellow arrow is pointing out is the location of the sewer lateral. Most sewer laterals are approximately 5 inches by 5 inches. They're brown and they have little holes in them to allow gas exchange. And that's a clean out. It's a location where a plumber can come in with a jet or and sort of knife it out to clear a lateral with any blockages. In this particular case, when this tree was planted, we believe the sewer lateral did not have a vent that was up on the surface. And so no one knew that the sewer lateral was there. The tree was planted. And in the last few years, there have been issues with the sewer line. When anecdotally, not even anecdotally, but the applicant told us that when they hired a plumber to snake it out or sort of blast out the line with high power water, it actually started coming out of this section of the basin. So it was clear that the sewer lateral is likely located right in this location where that arrow is placed, based on the fact that when they were shooting water in the location at another source, it was just shooting right out of there. So the planned area of excavation is shown in white. The sewer lateral replacement also shows that it would come along from the driveway. And we've covered the other part of that. Here's another close-up look. So the tree has caused damage to the sidewalk and likely potentially the retaining wall. Again, yellow triangle showing the approximate location of where the sewer trap or sewer vent would typically be located. And then just to reiterate, generally the tree can likely tolerate root pruning of single roots as close as 18 inches from the base of the tree. So showing the area from the blue line moving towards the trunk of the tree. If all roots must be cut along a single side of the tree within 6 feet of the base of the trunk, we do not believe the tree would be able to be retained. The species has a low root invasiveness rating, meaning the tree typically has pretty well-behaved roots. They don't often cause a lot of sidewalk damage or penetration into a sewer lateral. There is a small possibility the sewer lateral can be replaced with minimal to no root pruning required, but likely there's going to be some form of root pruning. Our inspection team, who are certified arborists, can inspect and evaluate the site while the area is excavated so that we can help evaluate essentially whether our recommendation will be to retain safely or if we're going to need to allow the property owner to remove the tree. If no or a few small roots must be pruned, the tree will be retained for sure. This is another side view, again showing there is some serious sidewalk damage. The tree can likely tolerate pruning of single roots, like we said, is close to 18 inches, but we also need to look at the location, the size, and how many of them would need to be pruned. This is showing an area. If all roots must be cut along the single side of the trunk, as stated earlier, then we'd be looking at recommending the tree for removal. I also located this tree on Google Street View, this photo of the tree on Google Street View. This was taken just in March of this year. It feels like Google's like, don't look behind you, but they're right there. But this does also show the amount of sidewalk repair that's going to occur out here. Typically, sidewalk repair in and of itself would not be a reason to approve a tree for removal, depending again on the amount and quantity of roots encountered. And so we appreciate the property owner clearly has a green thumb, has clearly enjoyed having the tree here. It's a pretty good sized tree for this species. It's not a large growing species, so this tree has been here for at least several decades, if not longer. And there are, if it wasn't for the sewer lateral and sewer excavation, this would be considered a much more routine sidewalk repair, and we wouldn't even have a hearing. We wouldn't be discussing removal. But again, we don't know the exact location of those roots. We will work closely with the property owner and their contractor when they excavate and pull up the concrete and they begin discovering what we see below. We will go out and inspect and document whether we believe the tree can be retained. So this is one of those cases where it's better to err on the side of caution, let the public know fully what's planned for the site, and that we're going to have to take a wait and see approach. We will document that information, and a thought occurred to me that what would be great for us to do is actually post information about what we find on our website, and we could notify anyone who speaks during public comment about what we find and what the recommendation is going to be, whether it's to retain the tree with that good news, or if it's to move forward with the removal due to the conditions that we find and document. So we're committed to informing the public about what that ultimate recommendation turns out to be. We can notify the public and also put it on our website, as well as reaching out to the applicants. But that's essentially what's going on here. Regarding replacement, if the tree needs to be removed, the site cannot be replanted because we require a minimum of 5 feet measured from where that sewer trap will get installed. And so if the tree has to be removed, we need at least 5 feet from that sewer lateral. We would also need 3 feet from the water line on the downhill side of the street. We wouldn't have enough spacing to put a replacement tree between the neighbors down the curb on the downhill side and the property owner's water line on the uphill side. So it's due to utility conflicts that we would not be able to replace it. In this particular case, we're having the property owner pursue removal because we don't typically address maintenance that's associated with sewer line repair. That's the one aspect of maintenance that we don't typically reinforce or reimburse for. That may change depending on what we find below ground. If the tree roots have physically grown to a point where they're physically breaking the sewer line, that could change. So, you know, likely our claims office may be involved to review the site as well. Regarding replacements, the code says that a property owner seeking to replace a tree needs to replace the tree. It says value, same value of the tree. If a tree like this needs to be removed because the roots are going to be cut and it's damaging the sewer lateral, if you do that landscape appraisal, a tree recommended for removal typically has no value, meaning it's lost the value that it's bringing to the site. So I believe our code doesn't require replacement be planted around the corner when that tree is being replaced by the property owner. It just says tree of equivalent value. We can look at placing a replacement tree around the corner. Public Works can, because it stated that in the opening of the hearing that it would be replaced around the street if it needs to be removed. So I just wanted to clarify that. And there was a question about basal area replacement. That refers to trunk diameter. So when someone says basal area replacement, they mean not replacing a mature tree with a small, tiny little tree from a street tree nursery, but actual equivalent trunk diameter. In this particular case, we would not be replacing the trunk diameter. It would just be with a basic replacement tree, not with the same basal area. So that's probably way too much information, but we rather err on the side of providing more information than less. And that describes the situation regarding this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, a question though, is there a place where the I guess, public information where the public can find out what type of trees are being planted when it comes to replacement, and then a timeline for it?
So the timeline, the immediate answer is it's typically covered in our public notices that we put on the trees, and then our website where we post tree removal information. Sometimes it'll have the replacement species. The timeline, our ordinance requires us to replace all trees that we remove within 120 days. And if we don't replace within 120 days, we're directed to maintain a list of those sites, deferred replacement sites, and state why it hasn't been planted within that allotted time frame. So unfortunately, most of the trees that we currently remove are not replaced within that 120-day time frame. In this particular case, a permit would be granted to the property owner to remove and replace the tree. But again, in this case, the property owner can't plant a replacement tree at this location due to utility conflicts. Public Works will plant a replacement tree nearby within 120 days, if possible. Species would be to be decided because we would need to locate where that replacement location would be. But that is something we could post on our website. If it turns into removal, we can identify where the proposed replacement tree would go along with the species.
Okay,
So
perfect.
we would post that on our website in this particular case.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Is the property owner or applicants available or here to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I was unclear as to why the tree couldn't be replaced somewhere in front of my house, but now I understand why. And a tree is at least 35 years old because it antedates when I bought my house 34 years ago. It still had the tree stakes on it when I bought my house. So I'd say it's a minimum of 35 years old. Yeah, it's been a great tree, and I love it. And I love the privacy and the shade that it gives my lot. But raw sewage has been backing up into my bathtub, so hence the sewer lateral replacement. One thing that was not clear to me in this, am I responsible then for the cost of removing the tree if the tree is deemed that it has to come down? Or does the city pay for that? That was not clear to me.
Chris, would you be able to answer that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So typically when if tree removal is due to impacts from the sewer, it would typically be the property owner. There is a lot of sidewalk repair. So I think this one, there's some gray area here that we'll definitely try to clear up. I think if the amount of sidewalk roots that were pruned to repair the sidewalk, if that becomes more of the story, it might be easier for us to, for sure, with certainty state that Public Works would handle the cost of removal. I'm gonna double check. I don't know. For some reason, I'm kind of blanking on this, and it could just be that it's what's refreshing is the property owner's desire to retain the tree and clearly loves the tree. So it's almost like trying to figure out why this one seems so cooperative, where we're jointly invested in trying to see if we can retain the tree if possible. That said, we're not here. We do know that the most costly thing here is the owner's need to repair the sewer line, and that's very serious business. So if we're able to handle the removal, we're going to err on the side of that. Just to be honest, it's I should clarify, it's typically the sewer line for sure that we are not unfortunately able to reimburse for.
Oh, right. No, I didn't expect that.
No. So, but let me triple check because we want to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases. I have a number of them,
Right.
and we'll just pull them up, and we can give you a pretty quick answer like tomorrow.
And I guess my other concern is, let's say when they're doing all the trenching and when you're A, taking up the sidewalk, B, then doing the trenching and looking for where the clean out is. What happens if the tree actually starts to lean then?
We won't allow that to happen. So
Okay.
we'll assess where those roots are with the contractor, and we'll actually kind of pause excavation to once we get a clear idea of what the conditions are below ground. We will then get to a crossroads, and the crossroads will be, wow, relatively clear sailing. Everyone feels comfortable here that we can allow the repairs to be made without putting anyone in harm's way. Or the complexity and the conflict and the damage becomes very clear. The contractor will say we can or we can't work around these particular routes, and we're in the proximity with that sewer lateral. And that point, we document it really well, and we say, okay, well, now let's pivot to coordinating a tree removal. So we will likely have some more conversations between staff and you as the property owner to kind of streamline and set some of that in place ahead of time.
Because at this point, the plumber was going to start excavating on Tuesday, May 6th. And were you going to have Allegra come out and like watch while they do it, or?
Yeah, she would come out at a certain point when there starts to be some excavation, and we're starting to see some of those initial roots. And oh, I see our clerk reminding us. Maybe what we'll do is we'll let the property owner finish their statements, and then I'll let you as the hearing officer
That was my only
follow.
statement.
I know we're the last item, so I do apologize if we've let the format go. So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
I'm done.
Is there another comment? I thought that there was another applicant or appellant. Were there two applicants on this? No? Okay. Public comment. Mr. Nolte?
Yes, good evening. So a couple of things that were brought up that were sort of like talked about, but not really talked about. And I could observe from, the public's eye here. Two issues. One issue is I see that there's a driveway and it goes under the front of the building. And it goes downward. And the second part of that driveway, the tree is to the left, and so that also could be hampering people, because I assume they have a car or at some point somebody's going to be using that driveway. And so the other issue what comes up with other similar cases when we're dealing with driveways and so forth is the tree is hampering the turning into the driveway, which I didn't hear anybody say either which way on that. Then the other issue that was brought up was the retaining wall. And of course, that's going to be another issue that is not even been talked about, because all we're talking about is a sewer line. But it was mentioned that, and I could see the crack in the retaining wall from currently a condition of the picture shown to the public. So that might have to be patched or fixed, or any other additional things to that retaining wall to the front yard of the building. So, which was not discussed either. So, and that might also impact depending if that's to be replaced, or, I'm not the property owner, so I'm not privileged to these things, but I can just see, being the public, to see that, there's a retaining wall that was discussed by Chris, and so those two issues were sort of missed because we're just only talking about the sewer and how that may impact the going forward. But I'm looking at some other issues that were not really discussed because of the location of the tree toward the driveway. And so that might be an issue too, somewhere down the road. Anyway, I do appreciate the thought of having, if this goes to be replacement, that it would be put on the website. That'd be great to inform the public that it would run forward, and also because you do have room for that, that would be great to use that space on your website to as this proceeds within the next month or two, one way or the other. Anyway, good luck to the property owner and good luck to Buff solving this situation, and hope the hearing officer understands the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Nolte?
Yeah, just one question, one point of, so if the tree is replaced somewhere in the neighborhood, that maybe another way of public notice is to say, well, this is the tree that's been replaced. It can be wrapped around the tree, so people are knowing or made aware that this is why the tree is there. And that's another way of notifying the immediate community that the tree has been basically relocated from another location. So it's saying on the notice that this is a relocated tree from this address to this address as a community benefit. And again, I want to emphasize the word, it's a community benefit, as another way of doing public notification. Again, just also want to say, for all those listening, we enjoy this earth and we hope that it continues. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no more members of the public who wish to comment, I will close this item. Okay, this item is now closed, and I will make my recommendation to the director. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments on items that we have not discussed tonight? Okay. If there are no more public comments, I am closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed.